Welcome back. Living with autism, ADHD, Asperger's, or basically any brain-based disorder can be challenging for everyone involved. And these disorders know no economic, racial, or ethnic boundaries. In fact, according to the National Research Council, 1 in 5 children are affected by a brain-based disorder each and every year. Lisa Davis, who recently co-authored a book about living with a mental disorder, it's called Easy to Love but Hard to Live With, is back with us today. Lisa, welcome. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, Carol, thank you so much. This book means so much to me, so I appreciate you having me back.
Well, why does this book mean so much to you? What made you write this book?
Well, you know, it's interesting. My mother had an invisible disability. She had something called sensory processing disorder, and that's where you're sort of overly sensitive to everything. Everything was too bright. Everything was too loud. She couldn't drive on the freeway because the cars were too fast. She had a lot of anxiety. She just didn't feel comfortable in the world. And I watched her sit in the dark for hours and hours a day as a kid, and I didn't know what was going on, and it was just very depressing. It was
This was her whole life she had this?
Yes.
Wow.
And then she died in her 50s from ovarian cancer, never being validated. Then I have a daughter who shows all the signs of having sensory processing disorder. Now, at the time, I didn't have the language for it. I was in a Whole Foods in Bedford, Massachusetts, when my daughter was 2, and we were already pulling our hair out because she never slept. She always screamed and cried, and the wind would touch her face, and she would cry, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's just like my mother. How am I going to do this? I don't even know what to do. And I saw this magazine, and it said, is your child oversensitive to her environment? I read it, I learned about sensory processing disorder, and I thought, wow, the power of stories. And so what I did is I reached out, and my co-editor, Tricia Blibin-Chazanoff, is a neuroscientist who has OCD. She had it so severe she was almost incapacitated for years. She had these horrible recurring thoughts and obsessions. And we joined together, and we thought, we want to do a book of a lot of different invisible disabilities. And so we just reached out to people, and it's a compilation of 35 stories of, there's a wonderful grandfather who had depression, and his autistic grandson helped pull him out of it. There's a woman who was a teen with agoraphobia in a domestic violence situation with her boyfriend who overcame it. There's my co-editor who's overcome her OCD. So it's very hopeful. And it's also, some people are still in the thick of it. It's tough. And then there's people like me who live with people who have these issues, which is why the book is called Easy to Love but Hard to Live With, because it can be challenging.
My doctor always taught me to look at the symptom and then work backwards. And I wonder how much of these symptoms, if you work backwards, are really all about the food we're eating, the pollution in our environment, the water that we're drinking. And I wonder how much just a little change in the processing of our foods, or the foods that we choose, the water that we choose, to make sure it's clean and the least processed and the most fresh. I wonder how much that can make a difference, even with the people who have these brain-based deformities and issues. What do you think about that?
No, I think you're totally right on, Carol. I think it makes a huge difference. I think that's why the prevalence is higher. But it's interesting. You've probably heard people say, or maybe because I have a daughter on the autism spectrum, I've heard people say, oh, well, in my day, kids didn't have this, and how come nobody had it before? And I talked to my aunt, though, who's 70. She said, I can name 5 kids right now in my class who had undiagnosed ADHD. They were the class clown. They were called lazy. They were called stupid. There's a Q&A with Henry Winkler, who had dyslexia. His parents called him a dumb dog. They treated him like crud because they thought he was stupid and lazy. And he's Henry Winkler. And he had to live with that. And, you know, he's had so much to overcome, and look where he is now.
So what do you think some of the natural way to alleviate these symptoms are?
You know, there's some great things right now, especially for anxiety. Now, some of these are thought of as for sleep aids as well, but there's valerian root, there's lemon balm, there's hops, which is interesting. I'm not saying go out and drink a bunch of beer. You can
hops is very relaxing.
Right. You can get the hops. There's L-theanine, which is found in green tea, which is also good for relaxing. I think one of the biggest things, and one of the stories in the book, is about a guy named, his name is Brian Leaf, and he had ADD, and he used meditation and yoga. And being mindful can be very difficult when you have ADD. I'd recommend trying a guided meditation, doing yoga maybe with a video that you like or in a class, rather than doing it on your own where you're going to be distracted, and then you might feel hard on yourself. So I think it's important to do those natural modalities.
I also heard that St. John's wort is really great for depression.
It is.
It can help you, taking it throughout the day, you know, a little bit throughout the day can help with depression.
It's
you
true.
heard that?
Yes, I have. And you know what's interesting too, Carol? There's a new supplement. It's called Lavelle, Lavelle. It is made from lavender, and it's shown to work just as well on anxiety as Ativan.
It's incredible. See, there's always a natural way to combat a lot of these things, or at least alleviate some of these symptoms. Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you being back on the show.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's always such a thrill to be with you.
Stay tuned. I give you my thoughts on an easy way to beat inflammation when we come back.